Hunter, $50. Thank you, Hunter. Says, watching Mahomes struggle with bad O-line makes you wonder the difficulty Jimmy G was facing this season with no mobility. The Niners defense was solid last year. Bring back Ferret or sign another corner. Our defense is solid, but the O-line and build the O-line in the draft. Hunter, this is a wonderful question. It actually predicts a topic we were going to go over. So why don't we just bring it up now and we'll come back to Darnold. But it was the topic after that, the importance of the offensive line. And Vish and I were talking about it on the phone. Last night's game was a bit of an extreme example. I mean, both tackles were out. Both a guard was out, but still, the Chiefs were favorites. The Chiefs were favored. You picked the Chiefs. Oh, and I'm just saying, a lot of people knew this and still said, you know what, Mahomes is going to find a way. And he couldn't. And it's not that he played poorly. He's great. He made 4 or 5 throws in that game that no one else in the world could make. And they were incomplete. They hit a guy in the face. It was like, okay. The guy ran for 497 yards behind the line of scrimmage, only 9 points. It's not his fault. At a certain level, even the greatest quarterback of all time needs protection. And so, Hunter, I think you got a really good point. The Niners have a very talented young guy. Is bringing in Mac Jones the answer, or is it building the O-line in the draft?
Okay.
What do you think, Vish?
Okay, 100%. I just want to say that, in my opinion, Josh Rosen coming out of college was a better prospect than Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, all 100% for sure. And that's just my opinion. That's just my take on it. And just if you look at them as players coming out of college, I think he was a better player. I think Lance maybe could have been better if he had more starts, but Rosen started 3 years essentially. So to me, that's why he was the better player, though Lance has the better physical traits because of the movement. So I do want to touch on that. 2, This is not the comparison. This is apples to oranges. They had 4 backup offensive linemen. The San Francisco 49ers never at any point this season had 4 backup offensive linemen that caused their offensive line to play bad. And if you want to go through their starting offensive line, I wouldn't say it's much worse than the 49ers. Mitch Schwartz, Trent Williams, that's a wash, okay? Eric Fisher has a big name because he got a decent contract from the Chiefs and he was drafted first overall. He is a very, very mediocre tackle. Nick Bosa exposed him for 22 pressures in the Super Bowl. Eric Fisher is not that great, okay? Their starting left guard to start this season was Kelechi Osemele. What did Kelechi Osemele do? Kelechi Osemele was signed for a huge contract by the Oakland Raiders. They cut him as a cap casualty. Went to the Jets. The Jets were more than happy to get rid of him, and the Chiefs signed him on the bargain, okay? So all these offensive linemen on the Kansas City Chiefs, it's not like they had 5 All-Pros. They didn't have a great offensive line to begin with. It was an okay one with Andy Reid, who's really good at coaching offensive linemen, and Mitch Schwartz, who was a superstar. And all those guys got hurt, and they were playing 4 undrafted free agents, basically, and Mahomes was running around. This is not the comparison to the 49ers, okay? I think the better way to look at it is look at Tampa Bay's offensive line. They did invest in their offensive line. And they have 4 really, really good players. They were missing their right guard, Alex Kappa, but Ali Marpet is a all-pro level player. Ryan Jensen is a good center. Tristan Wirfs played like an all-pro as a rookie, and Donovan Smith is a highly paid left tackle, okay? So I think that's maybe your better argument. Comparing Mahomes and the 49ers situation to this is totally wrong, and it's a wrong way to look at this, in my opinion.
Yeah, but that's not really what he's asking you. I mean, he's asking, do the Niners need to prioritize offensive line first in the draft? That's the question. Again,
it goes back to offensive line. The question to me you should be asking is, should the 49ers change how they look at offensive linemen philosophically? Kyle Shanahan looks Sage Rosenthal. Don't hear it from me. Hear it from Sage Rosenthal, who played for him. He went on Matt Mayoko's podcast, and he said it. So even though I've been saying it, I think that he's a much more reliable source, so listen to him. They prioritize lighter, quicker offensive linemen for their run game. Those offensive linemen usually struggle in the pass game. So even if you can say they draft an offensive lineman, the offensive lineman that they want to draft might be the same thing as what Mike McGlinchey has been, what Laken Tomlinson has been. These quicker, more athletic offensive linemen that are really solid in this run game that would still struggle in pass protection, okay? If you're going to draft Trent Williams, you're going to have to wait. You're just going to have to trade everything and hope you can draft Penei Sewell because he seems to be that type of prospect. If you're not going to get that—
on Tristan Wirfs. That guy fit.
Sure. And
he's big and fast.
What I agreed, and what I will say is, 1, I was wrong about Tristan Wirfs before the draft. I thought that he would be the worst of the 4 tackles. He was the best this year. So 1, I was wrong about that. And 2, we still don't know how he would function as a left tackle. And he did get lucky because he played with the greatest stepper-upper in the pocket. So when you got a guy that steps up in the pocket as well as Tom Brady, if you let the line go, if you
Wirfs.
Sure.
In 2020, they could have.
Sure.
They could have both of them. They could have had Wirfs on the right. McGlinchey on the at tight end. He's terrific blocking tight end. He's a wonderful block. He's the quintessential move tight end you want. They just got to work on his hands a little bit in his routes.
I don't know. I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah. So Hunter, I guess what Vish is saying is last night was an extreme example. It was an extreme example, but I still think the point remains that when you look at Seattle, they've been trying that for 5 years. They're like, let's go cheap. We have to cut corners somewhere because we're paying our quarterback so much money. So why don't we cut it at the offensive line and say that this guy is so athletic, we can afford to, and we'll put our money in on the defense. Well, that hasn't worked for Seattle.
But my question is, if you protect Russell Wilson runs into sacks a lot. So you can have the perfect protection. It's not like if you set Russell Wilson up a pocket, he's going to look right, then come back to a second read, step up in the pocket like a classical quarterback. He runs a lot. He runs around a lot. So investing in their offensive linemen, to me, is not fruitful for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think that's been their problem. I think their problem has been bad draft picks, bad investment of capital because they trade their draft picks for players who have not been worth the investment. And they've paid a lot of players that probably didn't deserve the money, and they've been kind of sticking around because Pete Carroll has a culture. Russell Wilson's a really great quarterback, and Bobby Wagner is a hell of a defensive player.
Okay, Hunter, look, I just got to have to disagree with Vish here. I mean, Vish won't go any further than saying that you can't draw any conclusions from the Super Bowl. I drew a conclusion. I feel that what we learned in that Super Bowl yesterday was that quality offensive line can win you a championship, and if you don't have one, you have no chance. And of course, no one's going to go into a season with that offensive line that the Chiefs had last night. But the general point still remains that the bigger weakness on the Niners right now is the offensive line, not the quarterback. And if they just think that bringing in any other quarterback who's not Tom Brady, even Brady, would have insisted on Tristan Wirfs. There's a reason that Tampa took him. He would have insisted on better pass protection. And to think that you can skate by with subpar pass protection, I think is a losing strategy. And if the goal is to win a Super Bowl.
I'm not saying that this offensive line is fantastic, okay? I think quarterback is the bigger need, but I do think offensive line is worth the investment. What I'm saying is my takeaway from the Super Bowl is the question of, do the Niners maybe have to adjust philosophically how they look at offensive linemen? And to me, that's a deeper question.
Do you think they have to?
I'm not sure. I would love to hear Kyle Shanahan's reasoning on why. Because obviously they set up his run game. They set up how he can marry the run and the pass. There's so many positives, and he showed those positives off in 2019. I would love to hear him really go into depth on why he prefers that, because that to me is the deepest question.
I just don't think you can really win a Super Bowl with an offensive tackle like Mike McGlinchey. I mean, to me, he's so run-oriented, and that's great. He's such a classic right tackle from like the 1990s. Right. But in today's NFL, even on the Niners, there's so many open formations where Kittle's out in the slot and there's no one next to McGlinchey and it's a pass and he just isn't built for that. I don't know.
I mean, it's an interesting case study. It's definitely worth looking into, like types of offensive linemen that won Super Bowls. If you can go and
you mentioned it to me last night. I mean, Tampa's offensive line is just bigger than the Niners offensive line.
Yeah,
bigger.
I mean, the Niners offensive line struggled with the size of the Chiefs defensive line a year ago. This year, Tampa's offensive line just wore him out. And, that won't be seen in the run stats, but you could see with first, the type of runs that they were running were slightly different here and there. And second of all, you could just see how you could see it visually, how Tampa's offensive line just took over that game down the stretch. That entire second half was about them.
Right. And we've talked about how Kyle Shanahan in 2 Super Bowls didn't, just grind out the win with the run. Well, his offense isn't really built to do that. It's built to stretch you out. It's built to get big plays and get you out and get the edge. But that's not what Tampa does. Tampa runs between the tackles with these slam backs who are like 225 pounds. And what's a 2-yard run in the first quarter becomes a 6-yard run in the fourth quarter because it's tiring. It's tiring. It's physical. And the Niners run game isn't physical. It's finesse in a good way. It's for the big. It's trying to get the big play, and it marries well with play action.
Right, and Tampa's running backs are also suited for that. The Niners running backs aren't the big grinders.
Although Wilson runs hard, he's like 200 pounds. It's different.